Welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to continue with our series on web development, introduction to web development in Python using the Django library or Django framework. So in this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and move on to user registration. So the last tutorial we went over and look at most of the basic stuffs. So like creating the app, creating a super user, logging into a super user, looking at the admin page and all of that content. So in today's tutorial, we're going to go ahead and learn how to create a new users. We don't have to necessarily go into the admin page to create new users. Like you have to log into the admin page here. I think it is admin, so my username is admin, and then we have to say my password. So we don't have to go in here and then simply go into users and then starting to create a new user and all of that information. Just clicking on add user, you can add a user here and that to work. But what basically I want to do is that I want to move this form into my into a page where the user can register without necessarily having access to the admin page, right? So that's what I want to do, and that's what I want us to look at. So I'm just going to log out and then going to log in again. We're back here, right? So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we need to go ahead and create an app. So in Django, if you look at the official documentation when I was telling you about last time, in Django we can create different apps. So I think if we scroll here, yeah, we can create different apps. So we can have the concept of Django is modularity, that meaning that our code is divided, our application is divided into many sections, so that we can have this modularity in our application, right? So in our case, we're going to try to create an app that handles just the user user registration and user authentication, like user login, user logout, and all of that. You're just going to create an app to handle just that one specific thing. Okay, so to do that, you just have to say Python 3 manage.py and then just start app and then the name of the app. So let's go ahead and do that inside of my terminal. So I'm going to hit Control and C to exit out of the to stop the server running. So once I do that, I'm going to simply go into ahead and simply say Python 3 manage.py manage.py and then simply say start app, and our app is going to be called authentication. So this is going to handle all the authentication stuff like user registration, user login, and user logout. Okay, so press enter, and once that's done, we can see the app is created. We have a folder called authentication. Okay, so if I go back into my VS Code right here and let me just minimize this. If I open up this, you can see we have this authentication folder and the notes folder. So if I go into my authentication folder, this is the authentication folder that we have right here. Okay, good. Okay, so once you have this done, what you have to do is now, once we created an app, you have to follow a set of procedures. Okay, and this is all listed in official documentation, but let's not waste time in me taking it to official documentation, because it doesn't really make sense. Why am I making the video if I must constantly just go documentation? So to save time, I'm just going to go ahead quickly and show you how to do it. So if I create an app, the next thing to do is to register the app that you have created. So in this case, you're going to simply say authentication, which is authentication .apps, right? So if you go to into your authentication apps, you can find a folder called apps, a file called apps, and this what in apps you're looking for this name right here. So simply copy this right here and simply go back in here and then simply paste it right here. So authentication.apps.authentication config, that's what you're trying to look for, and then don't forget the semicolon right here, sorry, the comma right here, because it is a list, right? It's a Python list. So under installed apps, make sure that you add authentication apps and then this authentication config, which is inside of this file right here. Okay, so that's basically it, and how you can add an app to it. So once we have added this app, great. Now how can we use this app? Okay, so let me just show you how we can simply go ahead and use app. So I'm going to close this app and I'm going to open views, and this in Django, this way we write all our views. So whenever you're trying to create a route where the user can access, you're going to keep all that route logic inside of this folder called views for each of these apps. So for the authentication app, you're going to have a view. Instead of our views, right, you're going to have a view inside of here. So this way you add all your views. So it's very similar to the model view and controller architecture, if you know that architecture and how it works. So we're going to put all our views inside of this file called views. Okay, views.py. So inside of there, I'm going to go ahead and simply create a new view here. So I'm going to simply say I'm going to create the function def. I'm going to call it index, and it's going to take in requests. So requests, and then in here, what you're going to pass in a couple of things in here. So instead of this function is we can pass in different things that the user is going to see whenever the user goes into access a different page in our application, right? So I'm going to import a couple of things here. So I'm going to go ahead and import something right here. So I'm going to go ahead and import, I'm going to say from Django HTTP I'm going to go ahead and import the HTTP response right here. So I'm going to import the HTTP response. So once I have that module imported, I can come down here and simply say return, and I'm going to say HTTP response, right? HTTP response, which we imported, and I can simply go ahead and pass in a hello world, right? So I can pass in anything I want. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and simply say hello world. So if a person goes to inside of our application and then try to access this view, we're just going to return that person hello world, a simple hello world. Okay, so how is a person be how will a person be able to access this view? And the person to be able to access this view, we need to go ahead and create a URL for this view, right? So instead of this authentication folder right here, create a new file and simply call it urls.py right here. So instead of our urls.py, we're going to write the code for our URL stuff right here. So I'm going to go ahead and simply say from Django dot urls, we're going to go ahead and import path, and then once I have that, I'm going to go down here. Path, this is going to be path, and not this is going to be path right here. Okay, I'm also going to say from dot I'm going to go ahead and import. I'm going to import the views, right? Import views. We're going to import this file right here, right? And inside of this file, we have a couple of methods that we can access to. So I'm going to say URL patterns. So URL patterns is going to be equals to a list of URL patterns right here. So passing that, and in here you're going to simply say path, which you imported. You're going to simply leave this to be just an empty string, and then in here you're going to simply go ahead and say views. View is going to be equals to views dot it's called index, right? The index view right here, and there you can pass in a name of this view, and this name can have a view. You can just call it index. Okay, just basically it, and then we can keep a comma right here. So that's basically it for all of that. So once we now, but if you go back to the web application, we will still not be able to access this page right here. So how do we make sure that it's visible and for users to be able to access it? For you to be able to do that, you have to go into your Notes app, and instead of your Notes app, you have another folder, another file called urls.py. So you have urls.py inside of the authentication app that exposes the authentication views, but you haven't exposed the authentication app yet into our end users. So to expose the authentication app out, we need to go ahead into our Notes app, which is our main app, and go instead of our urls.py. Okay, so instead of here, that's where we're going to go ahead and expose our app to the end user. So instead of the urls.py instead of the authentication, it only exposes the different views instead of the authentication app. Okay, but instead of our Notes app, or the main app, that's where we exposed our different apps to the public, or to the users to be able to view. So to do that, what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to simply say path right here. So I'm going to say path, and I'm going to pass in, I'm going to simply say out. So if a person goes to out /index or out or anything, I'll explain this just in a second, but for now let me just go ahead and add one more of this thing to it. So I'm just going to say include. I'm just going to import include there. So in here I'm going to say include, and I'm going to pass in authentication authentication.urls. Okay, so authentication is the name of our app, and you're going to say .urls, and authentication.urls is this file that you're referring to. Okay, so you have to say authentication, which is the name of the app, and then the URLs file which you created that you're referring to right here. And this URL path consists of different route paths that this app deals with. In this case, you're going to have just an empty path that goes into the views that returns the view.index, which is just this view right here that returns hello world. Okay, so if a person goes into our web application and types in out localhost at port 8000 /out, is going to simply go ahead and get redirected to this URL page. And this URL page, since the user didn't specify anything as for the /, is going to fall to this. Since it's empty, it's going to fall to this views.index, which is going to go ahead and return the index, this response to the user, which is going to be a HTTP response, simply returning a hello world. So let's go ahead and let me just try this out. So once we have this done, I can simply go ahead and start the server again. So I'm going to say python3 manage.py, and then say run server, and then press enter. So okay, let me just say run server. So run So just like that, and simply press enter. So we can see we have an error right here. So we have a circular import right here. So you can see we have that circular import error right there. So let's go ahead and see. Let me just hit Control C on my keyboard, and let's see what the error is. So in our authentication.urls does not appear to have any pattern in it. If you use the URLs patterns variables with valid patterns in the file, then the issue is probably caused by circular imports. So let's go ahead and see what that error is. So let's go start from here. So we're including in /alt, we're including authentication.urls, and instead of our authentication app.urls, we're going to go here and say url. Let me just say, I think I got the name right here, is url patterns. Okay, url patterns, and then is equals to this one. So I think that's the cause of the error, but let's see if that error goes away. And yeah, that error goes away. So my error was just I simply went ahead and simply say urls instead of url, and that gave us an error. Okay, so sorry for that bug. And yeah, once it's done, you can go ahead and simply access this page in your browser. So you can simply copy that link and access the page instead of your browser. So this is our page right here. So now I'm going to go in here, instead of my the URL section, I'm going to localhost, which is 127.0.0.1:8000/, or you can say localhost at port 8000/, we just say out, and then simply press enter. So once I press enter, you can see right now here I have hello world being returned. So that's basically it. So I'm getting a hello world being returned back to me. So that's basically it, and that's how a person can be able to access our index. So I went to first localhost at port 8000, right, /out, and out matches this. If I go into the our main app, the URLs, it matches this part right here, right? So out. So it's going to take us to authentication.urls is a file that handles anything that goes to out, right, /out. So it comes here and then goes in here instead of this file, and then looks at the patterns that match. Since we didn't provide any specifications after the /, we just said out /, right? So you can see it is an empty string, so it matches this one right here, and this one is the view that it handles is the index view, right? Views.index, which simply goes in here and returns a simple hello world. You can even change this to be a HTML, so you can say h2 tag or h3 tag, and then let's go in here and simply end of that, so you can say h3 tag right here. So once you have that, so if I go back in here, you can see now it's a h3 tag right here. So yeah, that's basically it, how you can work with the different templates and how the URL works in Django. So this tutorial is going to be a bit long, and you're going to go ahead and cover very important and fundamental stuff. So let's look at what's next on our list. So the next thing on our list is let me see what's next on our list. So let me see what we can do next. So I think the next thing we can go ahead and do is actually add some different templates that we can instead of our application right here, because right now we're just returning a simple HTML tag instead of this. Imagine the whole web application, right, consists of a lot of HTML, the header tags, the link tags. You can't write everything in here. If you write everything in here, you can write it here, you can do that, but it will get messy pretty fast, right? So to do that, to make sure that doesn't occur, Django allows us to return actual HTML files to the front end. So how do we return HTML files to the front end? So first of all, we have to go ahead and create a folder. So I'm going to just minimize all of this for now. So instead of our base directory, which is instead of our root app, I'm going to create a folder right there. I'm going to call this folder templates. So templates, and make sure you call it exactly templates. Okay, so call it exactly templates, or else you get an error. So call it templates, and the reason I'm telling you to call it template because that's the default that everybody uses when creating Django apps, and it makes debugging and other stuff much easier. So once we have created we have added the templates in here, what we have to go ahead and do is that we need to go ahead and update a couple of things. So we can actually go in here under template in here. Let's actually add main.html. Okay, let me just add main.html in there, and I'm going. So once I have the main.html file created, I'm going to go ahead and simply add some HTML code. You can just press the exclamation mark and simply press enter on your keyboard if you're using VS Code. That should auto complete the basic HTML files, basic HTML template for you. If you don't know how to do that, you can just pause the video and type this out. Okay, so once we have this done, what I'm simply going to go ahead and do, I'm just going to go ahead and simply say return a h3 here. I'm just say h4, and then simply say main HTML layout, or HTML, let me just say layout, let me just call it HTML file. Okay, let me just call it that. So we're going to use this file for layout, but for now let's just call it, let's say main HTML file. Okay, So once we have this done, we need to go ahead and actually let how does Django know that our templates are inside of this templates folder? So to do that, you have to let Django know that our templates are inside of this folder. So what we need to go is go into our main app, which is our Notes app, go under settings, and under setting you can just what you can simply go ahead and do is we're going to simply go ahead and simply add the settings in here. So we're going to look for something called let's go and just scroll up here and let me try to find it something that deals with templates. Yeah, so this is where I am interested in. So under that, what we want to simply go ahead and do is add in the part to that template. So I'm going to simply pass in a tuple in here, and to add this in, what I'm going to go ahead and do, I need to import one more thing. I'm going to import the OS library. So I'm going to go ahead and import OS. So once I have OS imported, which is a built-in Python module for dealing with file systems and stuff and the underlying operating systems, right? So what I'm simply going to go ahead and do here, I'm going to simply say os.path join. So os.path.join, you want to join the base dir, and if you know what the base dir is, if you scroll up here, we can see we have the base dir right here, which is the root directory that the build inside the project, like the base dir or subdirectory. So I'm just going to use the base directory, which is pointing to the base directory. So we're going to join the base directory. You're going to join it with the following. So we're going to join it with a folder called templates, and templates is a folder that we created, right? So I'm going to use double quotes and saying templates. Okay, so I have to use double quotes here because on the outside, okay, you have to get, okay, actually you can use single quotes if you want, but you can I thought to use any quotes any outside on the outside, but we didn't use any quotes on the outside, so we can use double quotes here or single quotes. So I'm going to use double quotes and say templates, and templates is the name of this folder that you're referring to right here. So just saying Django that all our templates are found inside of this templates folder. Okay, so if you change this to be a different name, then also this folder must be a different name. Okay, so once we have this done, what I want to go ahead and do is you have just been able to get access to it. So be able to get access, we just told Django that our templates are inside of this folder called templates. Now how can we get access to it? So let's say that if I go back into my authentication app and I go into views, let's say that I want to return a view right here. Okay, so what I want to do here, I can just simply, instead of returning this HTTP response, I can delete it. I can say render, which is imported by default by Django. So I can delete this and say render, and what do we want to render? We're taking the request, so the request, and then you're going to pass in the template. So we're going to say template name, and template name is going to be the following. So template name is going to be main.html, just like that. So once I have this, if a person goes now to our page here, now we should be able to have access to this HTML document. Okay, so let me check if my server is running. It is. So I'm going back in here and then simply refresh this. So you can see now main HTML file. Okay, so great. So now you are able to have, you are now returning the HTML file. So if you go under inspect and you go in here, you can see we have all that stuff in here. So you can see all this stuff in here. So right, we are actually returning the actual HTML file rather than just HTTP response that returns a single HTML element. Okay, so great. So now everything works as we expected to. So what I want to go ahead and do is, let's see what's next on the list. So now that we have this done, right, so I want to also talk about how we can use templates in here and all of that. So now if you go back to our page here and you look here, you can see the title of this page right here is called documents, because we have specified here documents, right? So what if you want this to change? In this case, we're creating a note app, so I want it to be like note app. So note app. So if I do this and I go up here and simply refresh this page, now it's changed to note app right here, right? So you can see it right here is note app. Now I want to do one thing. Let's say that if I'm on a registration page, I want it to be not app hyphen registration. If I'm on a login page, I want to be not app hyphen login. So how do we do that? And Django has Django comes with a default templating engine called Ginger templating engines, right? So if you ever use Flask, and I have a lot of videos on Flask on my channel, Flask is just another library framework similar to Django, but it's also used to build web applications in Python. And you have a lot of tutorials on Django, so you can check on Flask, so you can check those tutorials out on my channel if you're interested. Flask also uses Ginger 2 templating engine, and so does Django. So you don't have to actually learn much in here, because it's just the same concept you're going to use here. So to use a templating engine, again, if you don't know and you're a complete beginner to this, don't worry, I'm going to go ahead and explain all of this to you. So we can use a templating engine to return the different stuff that you want. In this case, we want to change the title depending on which page that you are on, right? So it's actually very simple to do. So to do that, you have to say in here, you have to use curly braces and then percentage signs, 2 percentage signs, and in between here you can write content. You can write a logic. So I'm going to say if title, right? If the user provides in the title, then you're going to say not up and then hyphen, and then you're going to say the title. So you're going to say title. So make sure that you pay attention to the syntax right here. Is 2 curly braces and two opening curly braces and 2 closing curly braces, and then you're going to pass in a variable called title. Now where is this variable going to come from? And this variable is going to be passed in from our view right here. So we can go ahead and simply pass in, say context, yeah, and you can pass in, you can say pass in a dictionary right here. You can say title, and then you can say title is going to be a string, and you can say this is going to be main page. Let's say main. Okay, let's say main. Okay, let's leave it like that. So content right here is the key, right? The key and the value. So the key is what you're going to be using, referring to here, title. So if the user has provided title, then you're going to say notepad and then title. Else you can also pass in an else here, right? You can just write programming logic in here. So you can say else, and then you have to go ahead and end that if block. So I'm just going to go ahead and end if. Okay, so when you start an if statement, then you have to have a closing if block. So a beginning if block and a closing if block, and then else if the user didn't provide in that title, then you're going to simply say there'll be no title variable, so you're going to simply say not up. Okay, so if there's any title provided, you're going to say the title, in this case our title, not up, and then main, right? So if there's no title provided, you're just going to say not up, and then have the ending if statement. So great. So once we have this done, I'm just going to go in here and then simply hit on. Now look, keep an eye on the title of the window. So if I just refresh this, now we got an error right here. So let me just zoom out a bit. So let me zoom out of this back to 100. So it says that okay, let me see. Else. Okay, so that's my bad. So it's actually else, not ls. I don't know how to pronounce that, but else, right? So if I refresh this, now you can see the title has been not up and then hyphen main, right? Because you have passed in the title. Now if I go into the view and I don't pass in the title, I remove this context, right? I remove the context right here, and then let me just close up of that, and then simply go ahead and refresh it. Now you can see it defaults to not up because the title doesn't exist, so it defaults to not up. That's what the logic is here for. So if the title, then say not up and then hyphen title, else we're just going to say not up, and then you're going to end that if. Great. So that's how you can pass variables from the context from the view here right into a HTML file. Great. So now that you have looked at that, what I simply want us to go ahead and do is to actually create a simple template that other templates can inherit. So we have this concept of template inheritance in Django. I've explained this in my other Flash tutorials, but I'm not going to go into depth up inside of this tutorial. But basically is that when we have a page, right? When we have a page, let's say that I have another view right here, right? This view deals with something else. So let me just copy this and paste it. Let's copy it and simply paste it right here. So if I paste it right here and call it index 2 right here, and index 2 or index 3, whatever, and this simply returns to me another template, right? So returns to me another template basically. So one thing is that let me just say this one has a different text name, right? So let me just say main 2. Okay, so now what if I want to access main 2? What I have to do means that I have to simply go ahead, create another file in here, copy all the content of this file, which is copy all the content of this file, and move it into my file 2. In case I have a navigation bar inside of my file 1, and I want the same navigation bar to show in file 2, right? Because that's for most websites, right? They share navigation bars on different pages. So if I want to do that, means I have to go ahead, create another file, and then copy all the content in here into that other file for it to be able to show. Now that's a lot of work, right? And imagine that you have 20 different pages or even 1,000 pages on your website, so you have to copy the template, you have to copy the navigation bar to all of those pages. Now that's fine, there's no issue with that. But what if you want to make a change to, maybe you want to change the color of the navigation bar? Means that you have to go into all the 1,000 files, right, and change just the color. That's a lot of work and can get messy pretty fast. So the solution to this that Django has is template inheritance, meaning that you can create a template that you can other templates can inherit, and that's I'm going to show you how to do that. But before we get to it, let me just go ahead and actually add a bit of template, code to this. So I want to actually go in here. I'm going to create a folder in here. I'm going to call this one out. Okay, just we're going to keep all our out templates. So I'm going to create a template in a file in here called registration.html. okay, Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to call this one the registration row, so registration, and I'm going to refer to out/registration.html, and you're going to pass in the title as registration. Okay, so once we have this there, now that's great, right? So we can also go ahead and simply add this into our URLs right here. So I'm going to go in and simply say path, and then I'm going to say register. So if a person goes to out/register, it's going to get this view, and you're going to say views equals to view registration view, and you give it a name, and a name you can just say the name is going to be a string. You're just going to say register, just like that, and then I can end this with a comma right here. So great. So if a person goes to out/registration, it's going to go ahead directly to this view called registration view, which is this function right here, and this function returns a template called out, this out folder /registration.html. okay, so now let's go ahead and check it first if it's running. It is. Let me just go in here and just simply say out /regis. I called it, let me just see what I called it. Here I called it register. So if I go in here and just say register and simply roll that, now we can see it turns to an empty page because this registration page right now has no content inside of it. So let me just actually add some HTML content in here, and then just say h3, just say h4, and then say just say user registration, just like that, and simply go in here and then refresh this. Now you can see if I zoom in here, you can see we have this user registration right here. Great. Now you can see that it doesn't inherit anything from here, and the title of this is still document. If I go here, the title is documents. So if I go here, the title is documents. Now we don't want that, right? We want the title to be not page and then hyphen registration, which is the title that we passed from this view right here. So that's where the concept of template inheritance comes in. So in here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a basic layout that other templates can inherit from. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to create a navigation bar. Okay, so to create a navigation bar actually is very simple, but first of all, let me just show you how the template inheritance works in a nutshell. So I'm just going to go up here and just create a content right here. So this is going to be called it's going to be percentage sign, so percentage sign, just like this, and then percentage sign, and then simply say block content, just like this. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to create a block called block content, and I have to go ahead and simply end that. So I'm going to say end block, just like this. So I have block content, and I'm going to end that block content. So this block content can be inherited by other templates. So what I mean by that actually very simple. Let me just go ahead and simply delete all of this inside of here. So let me go ahead and show you how template inheritance simply works. So basically we can inherit everything from inside of this layout template except what is inside of these content blocks. Okay, you might be confused and might be asking what's all that. So let me just explain to you just in a bit. So I'm going to go inside of my registration. I'm going to create a code block here. So these are called code blocks, and then I'm going to say extends. So I'm going to say extends, and then I'm going to simply say dot then /main, right? Because I'm inside of the out folder, so I'm going back one directory and I'm accessing the main.html file. Okay, and once I have access to it, what I'm simply going to go ahead and do is I can just simply say add the block content. So if you go back in here, inside of here, you can see I have block content. So I'm simply going to go ahead and copy that, go in here and simply paste it in here. So whatever we write in here, right, is going to override everything that is inside of here, but everything that is inside of this or opening and closing content blocks, but everything else is going to be the same. Means the title, the title logic is going to apply, everything else is going to be same. Even the main file is going to be the same except whatever is inside of the content block. Okay, so I'm just going to go here and say just pass in a h2 and then say registration page, just like that. So once I have this, let me check if my server is running. It is running, so I'm going to go in here and then refresh. So once I refresh, you can see we have main HTML file and then we have registration page. So let me just explain to you why we're getting that output. Since you're only overriding the content that is inside of the content blocks right here, so everything else remains the same, including the main.html page. That's where it's appearing there, and including the registration information, which is going to be coming from this page, is going to be inserted in here. Okay, so you might be asking, if you want to take a closer look, you can open up the inspect page and then open up the body tab. You can see all of that here, including all our title logic, and all of that is here. So you can see all of that information is here in here. So all that has been replaced instead of the content block in here is the content that is coming from this registration page, is this one, because this page extends the layout, the main.html file. Okay, so that's a lot of explanation about how registration template inheritance work in Django, and I hope that explains a lot of stuff to you guys. Okay, so once we have looked at that, let me see what's next on our page. And what's next on our page is simply creating the making the form so you can register a user. So how do we make a form to register a user? So we need to make a form, and then that form is going to be used to register a user, right? So I'm going to go into my inside of my authentications file, my authentication app, and I'm going to create a file. I'm calling forms.py right here. Let me see, is it forms.py or is it something else? Yeah, I think it's forms.py, and then let me just press enter right here. So instead of forms.py, we're going to keep the form that's going to handle the user registration. So Django by default comes with something that you can use to register users, which I think that is called let me just see, I think it's called let me just check my notes that I have written here so that I don't miss any information that I want to give to you guys. So Django comes with a pre-built registration form called the user creation form that connects the pre-built models. So models or database are called models in Django, or even in Flask are also called models. So we have Django comes with some pre-built in models. So remember when we were learning on the first video, we ran migrations, we ran a migration, and that started up all our default models, which I said, or default databases. Yeah, so the user registration has a pre-built Django has a pre-built model or database that handles user registration. So we're going to be using that to create a form, and that you're going to use that form to sign in or register new users. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and simply say from Django I'm going to go ahead and import forms, and I'm going to go and say from Django contrib dot forms. I'm going to go ahead and say user creation form, just like that. Let me just get that right. So it's a user creation form, that one right there. And I'm also going to say from Django from Django.contrib.out models, right? I'm going to go ahead models. I'm going to go ahead and import the following. So I'm going to import the user model, which I have right there. Okay, so once I have those created, I'm going to go ahead and create my model right here. So let me just keep a comment and say create your forms here. So instead of our forms.py, file, that's we're going to create all our forms. Okay, so we're going to create a class called registration. Let me get the spelling right. So registration form, and it's going to inherit from the user creation form that we imported, and then we're going to have the function right here. So we're going to create and I want also user to pass in their name, their username, and their email as well to register. Because if you go back to the admin page, so if I go into the admin page, let me just close this off, and if I go into the admin page, so I'm going to say admin page, and I let me just zoom out of this. So if I just go back to 100, okay, just like that, and I try to log in here, I'm going to go use my admin page, and then my password right here. I'm going to log in with my password. So login. So once I log in here, let me just zoom in a bit, so you can see we have the users table right here. Instead of a users table, we can go ahead and say add a new user. So if I scroll up a bit, so you can see it takes a username and a password and then a confirmation password. It doesn't take the user's email. So let me just show how we can take the user's email. Okay, so let me just go back into my VS Code right here. So we're going to create an email. We're going to also ask the user to register with their email. Maybe you want to extend this up further and then be able to send emails to his users. So we want to collect their email for some reason, or we want to do some email marketing and you want to collect the user's email. So that's how you can do it. You can say forms.email field, and you can say required equals to true, because we want the user to provide in their email. Okay, so we say meta, and I'm going to have a model here, and model is going to be, because we're going to be using the user model, which we imported right here. So the user model is what controls this user page that we have right here, okay, for registering users. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and simply also say the fields that I'm interested in. So fields, and the fields are going to be the following. So it's going to be a tuple of fields. So I'm going to say username, right? So you have to say username, and then you have to say email, right? The order in which they also comes in, and then you also say password 1 and also password 2. So password 2. Okay, so you have to say password. You have to be exactly as I typed it in here. Okay, so make sure that you have no typos and it's exactly as I typed in. Okay, so once I have, I'm going to have a class here. So this class is going to be called save. That's going to go ahead and save the user's data. So I'm going to take in self, which is a self keyword. If you did object-oriented programming with Python before, okay, so you're probably familiar with the else keyword. So we're going to say else. We're going to take in else. The save function is going to take in else and commit, and we're going to say commit is going to be true. So when you say user is going to be equals to the following. So we're going to say super. We're going to refer to the parent class or the base class. We're going to say registration form, and I'm going to pass in self, and I'm going to say dot save, and I'm going to say commit. Commit is going to be equals to false for now, and we're going to simply say user dot email, right? Let me get that right. User dot email is going to be equals to self dot cleaned. Okay, clean data. So self dot clean data, and I'm going to simply get the email out of it. So you can simply say dot get or something. You can say dot get, but I'm just going to use the square notation. So pass in and just say email, because it's going to be a dictionary basically. So I'm going to go ahead and say if committed commits, if commit, what you can simply say is user dot save, just like that, and then simply return the user at the end of the saving. Return user. That's basically it. So great. So let's go over this one. We have created an email field. You have simply said the meta, which tells you the models to use. We're going to use the user model. The fields that you're interested in from the user model is a username field, the email field that we have created right here. We want the password one and the password fields, which is password and password confirmation, right? And then we have the save function, or the save method in this case, because it's inside of a class. If you have the user, and the user is going to be the super user, and then registration form and self dot save commit is equals to false, right? Now when you say user dot email is going to be self dot clean data, you're getting the user email after cleaning the data. It's also going to do some form verifications to make sure that the user actually provided an actual email, like has the @ symbol and all the email formatting. And then we're going to check if commit, and then you're going to simply say save the user, and then simply return the user. That's basically it. Okay, so now you have created the form, and how do you use the form to take in data from the user? So you can go to the views, right, and then simply use the form inside of there, and then pass the form to the view, and then from the view to the template, and then from there you can take in the user's information that you're interested in. So let's go inside of our views, and inside of our views registration view right here, what I want to go ahead and do is change this code a bit. Okay, so what I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and import a couple of things. So let me just go ahead and import those things that I'm interested in. So the thing that I'm interested in is the form. So I'm going to say from dot forms, I'm going to go ahead and import registration form right there. Okay, I also want to go ahead, yeah, that's basically what I need for now. Let me just go in here. If you need anything, we'll import it as we go along. So what you're going to check, we're going to check if the request, right, if the request that you passed in dot method is going to be equals to a post method, right? So a post method. So if it's a post method, because if you are sending forms to the back end, you're doing a post method. Okay, so there is a post method. If it's a post method, we're going to create a form called registration form, just an instance of it, and the form's data is going to be request dot post, just like that. Okay, so we're going to do if form dot is underscore valid. We're going to check if the form is valid. We're going to do some form validations right here. So if the form is valid, what we're going to say user equals to form dot save, right? And since form is an instance of this, we can call the save method, which is defined right here, the save method, which will hide and save the user and then returns to us the user. Okay, so I'm going to also go ahead and simply say we're going to also, once the user has saved, you can simply send a message to the user, allowing them, letting them know that they have saved, the form has been saved. So you have to import this messaging module from which comes in built with Django. So we say from Django dot contrib. I'm going to go ahead and import message, just like that. So we're going to say message, and this message has a lot of different bootstrap classes. Okay, let me just get this right. Import. So this messaging scheme has a lot of bootstrap classes, like the information class, the post class, and all of this can be found here. So if I go and then simply search for bootstrap alert classes, just search for that, and if I go in here and then click on that, so the bootstrap has a lot of alert classes, the info, all of that is all here, right? So you have the primary, which is this one right here. We have the secondary, we have the alert, we have the danger, we have the warning, we have the success, we have light, we have dark, and all of that information. So this messaging class also uses those default messaging schemes right here, so you can use those messaging schemes, and we'll see the importance of this whenever I go into the front end, right? So I'm going to say message.success, right? Message.success, message.success, and then pass in the request information, and then we pass in an f string right here, which is basically a string. I'm going to use an f string because I want to use variables instead of my statement. So I'm going to say account has been created for, and then I'm going to use curly braces and pass in the username. In this case, it's going to be user.username, just like that. Great. So this is going to flash to the user that the user information has been updated, and once this is done, you can go ahead and simply return the user to another page. In this case, we don't have any other we don't have any other page that we are working with right now. So in this case, I'm just going to return the user to the registration page after registration. So we're going to return the user to, I have imported something called redirect that you're going to be using right here. And okay, it looks like Django VS Code already imported this. Just delete this, delete that. So I'm just going to go ahead and simply say in here redirect. So redirect, redirect, and then redirect, you're going to simply go ahead and pass in where you want to redirect to, and where you want to redirect to is the name of this URL right here. So I'm going to simply copy the name, which is this right here, copy the name, and not this one, the name here. And then I'm going to go ahead, let me just close some of this off. So I'm going to go ahead and simply go in here and simply paste that name in, which is registration page. Okay, so if whenever you register a user, you're just going to redirect the user back to this registration page. It's not the best thing to do right now, but we'll fix it later on, since we don't have any other route created yet, or we can just redirect the user to the index page if that's okay. So you can also go in here and then get the index, and then simply redirect the user back to the index page. So copy this and then go in here and then simply here, and then simply redirect back to the index page right here, paste it right here. Okay, so also, in case the form fails to validate, you're going to simply say error. We're going to send an error to the user, so we'll say error, and then we're going to simply say error, and we're going to simply say we're going to pass in the request. That's the first thing we need to pass in, so the request, and I'm going to pass in a string, say that form validation failed. Please, we can just say please check that you have provided the correct details, just like that. So details, okay, just like that. So that's a bit of long string, but yeah, that's basically it. Okay, so in case it's not a post request, right, maybe the person makes a get request, because if you go on the web page the first time, you'll be sending a get request to the web page, right? So if it's a get request, then you're going to say form is going to be equals to a registration form. So we're going to create a form that has no data, but if it's a post request, then we expect to have the data, and the data is going to be request.post, which is the data, right? Okay, so if it's not a post request, then it's a get request, or likely, then we'll simply return to you an empty form. But if it's a post request, we're going to create a form with the data from the post data filled in. That's basically it. Yeah, that's basically it. And then we're also going to go ahead and simply pass in this form. So I'm going to go ahead and simply say form, and the form is going to be the form that we have, right? So we're going to pass in the form so that our templates can use it. Okay, so great. So if you go back into our registration page right here, you can go ahead and design the form so the form can show up to the end user. So we have to go into templates, and the template, go into auth folder, and instead of your auth folder, you go into registration, and then open up your registration.html folder. So in here we continue writing our code. Right now we're just returning this right here. So I don't want to return this, I want to return an actual thing, right? So I'm going to go ahead and simply delete this for now, And what I'm going to go ahead and have in here is going to be the following. So I'm going to have a div, right, a div tag, and instead of this div tag we're going to give it a class. So I'll give it a class. But one thing before I even move in here, like, let me just return everything as it is right here. So one thing before I even move, you're going to be using Bootstrap, right? So I didn't actually include the Bootstrap classes in here, so I want to go ahead and include Bootstrap right in here, okay, before I move back into adding the form right here. So I had something I forgot, so let me just go ahead and actually add it here. So let's go ahead and actually get those Bootstrap CDN. So I'm just going to go back in my web page and then click on getting started right here. So I'm going to get the CDNs. What does CDN stands for? CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, meaning that you don't have to install anything. Everything is going to be delivered through the internet. So all you have to do is copy these links right here and simply go ahead and paste it in your Boots and your HTML file. So you can say Bootstrap CDN. So CDN. Okay, so this for the CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and simply paste it right here. And then we can go back this here, and then I'm going to get the one for the JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and simply hit copy, and once I hit copy, I'm going to go down here and simply paste it just at the just before the closing body tag. So I have those things pasted right here. So let me just format all of that, and let me just hit Control P to format document, and then format all the document. So great. Yes, once we have this done, I'm just going to go inside and let's actually see if once you have done this, it actually to show some little changes on the web front page. So let's check if those changes are going to reflect. So let me just check if our server is running. The server has an issue, so I think we import Django contrib. We want to import messages and not message. So let me just go here and say messages, messages right here. I think that should have that error fixed. Yeah, it's fixed. So now our server is running. So if I go back in here and then just go log out of this, and then just go into the, it's called out, so we call it out /register, and then go in here. So you can see it looks like this now. So those, you can see that it has changed in appearance a bit, right? Because that's that shows that the Bootstrap is reflecting. But if you don't notice any change, then that's fine, but there's a bit of change to it. It's a bit difficult to notice, but there's a change to it. Okay, so once we have this done, now what I want to go ahead and do is we have our Bootstrap setup, and so in here you can go ahead and actually return the form that we want to return to the front end. So I'm just going to go here and just say let's give a comment, registration form right here. And once we in here, I'm going to create a div with a class of container. Okay, before we do that, even let's go in here. I want to do something inside of our main in here, our main file in here. And what I want to do is I want to design just a basic layout instead of our main.html file. So go instead of templates, and then instead of main.html file, and what I want to go ahead and do here is add a simple template. Okay, so to do this, I'm just going to go in here, and I'm going to say container, and instead of the container, I'm going to have a row, and instead of the row, I'm going to have call md underscore md hyphen is going to be 2. So I'm going to say 2 here, 2, and then press enter. So it's going to create a column as a size of 2. So Bootstrap, the screen is divided into different columns. So the screen is divided into 12 main columns. So there are 12 main individual columns, right? So you're going to give 2 to the first column, and then you're going to create another column down here. I'm going to copy this and paste it a couple of times. So we're going to create another column called 8. So the middle one is going to be 8, where the form is going to be, right? So the form is going to be in the middle one. Is going to have a column size of 8, right? Means we're going to take the majority of the space, while we're going to have a column, a space of 2 columns right here, a space of 2 columns, and then in the middle we're going to have 8, where the form is going to the form is going to be at. So instead of here, I'm just going to go ahead and add every of the blog content. We're going to cut this and simply go ahead and paste it in here. So all the blog content is going to be inside of our main right here. So great. So once we have this done, I can go back and simply go ahead and refresh this page. Now the registration doesn't show. So okay, so right now I have this thing right here. I'm going to go ahead and simply delete it, and if I go back in here, I can simply undo it. I can just simply go ahead and simply add it here, h4, and just say registration page. And then if I go back in here, and then simply hit refresh, now you can see the registration page move here, because here there are 2 columns and here there are 2 columns, and in the middle there are going to be 8 columns where the form is going to be. Okay, so great. So now once we have all our content specified in there, what I want to go ahead and do is I also want to go ahead and add a navigation bar to the front page before we continue to our main page that all the other templates are going to go ahead and inherit. So I want to go ahead and add the navigation bar to it. So I'm going to say navbar, and then simply press enter. So navbar, nav. So let me just search for navbar, and then once you search for navbar, you can simply go ahead and copy the navbar that you're comfortable using. So I'm just going to be using this one. I'm just going to hit copy and then go in here and then simply paste it just after the opening body tag, and then format the document a bit. So I don't need a lot of this, so I'm going to go ahead and delete a couple of this. So if I go back in here, and then if I go back to our page and then I refresh this, now you can see the navigation bar right here. Okay, now I'm going to customize this to my own preferences. So I'm going to simply call this one is going to be not up. That's the title of the page. I don't need this drop down. I really don't need a drop down, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the drop down right here. I don't need the form. I don't need the disabled. I'm going to delete all of this right here. Yeah, so let me go back and simply check how it looks like. So I'm going to hit refresh. It looks like this. Now I want to go ahead and change the coloring. So it's going to be BG dark. Yeah, that's basically so background dark. I think that should change the color. So refresh this. Yeah, so it looks like that. So now what I want to do is yeah, that's the navigation bar basically, and this navigation bar is responsive, so you can see if you want a small device like a mobile phone, it responds and shifts and changes like this. Okay, so we don't have to do write any CSS to get all of that. You see, it's just really efficient using Bootstrap. Okay, so now it's going to be home page. We can change this to be registration or any other links later on, but for now let's just leave it like that. We'll come back to it just in a second once we are done. Okay, so now what I want to go ahead and do is I want to go back to the registration page. Instead of the registration page, this way I'm going to go ahead and create my registration form. Right, so I'm going to go in here and simply say go inside of the folder, go inside of your templates folder. Instead of your templates folder, go inside of this folder called out, and then instead of out, go inside of the folder called the file called registration.html. So instead of registration.html, we're going to go ahead and simply add the code in here for to display the form. Right, so you're going to simply say we're going to pass in a div. We're going to have a class, and the class is going to be container. We're going to have a container just like that, and I'm going to have a padding y, and the y is going to be of 4. Okay, yeah, that's what I want to do, and I'm going to go ahead and close of that, and I'm going to have a legend, right? So we say legend, and you're going to pass close of that legend, and the legend is just going to be, you're going to say user registration right here, and you're going to give it a class. So the class is going to be the font. So the class is going to be we're going to have a class called border hyphen bottom. So border bottom, and you're going to have a padding bottom of 2, and then you're going to have a margin bottom of 4, and you're going to go ahead and say text hyphen center, just like that. So text hyphen center, just like that. And once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and simply say have a div here, and this div is going to have the following. So you're going to have a class. We're going to give it a class, and the class is going to be called a bootstrap. This is going to be a bootstrap card, right? So we're going to have a card right here, and instead of this div, I'm going to have another div that's going to have a class of card hyphen body, just like that. And instead of the card body, you're going to go ahead and have a form here, and we have a method, and the method is just going to leave it to be default. The method is going to be a post method, sorry, my bad, post. And then we can close off that. Okay, so you can close off this, and then in here we're going to go ahead and pass in our form. So to pass in that variable, so let's go ahead and say form right here. I will just explain to you where you're getting this from just in a second, but first of all, let me just type out the button for submitting the form. Button, and it's going to have a class. It's going to have the same btn, which are just some bootstrap classes. Btn hyphen outline hyphen success. I'm going to use success on it, which is going to be a green button. So I'm going to say margin top of 4, get a margin top of 4, and then margin or padding of hyphen. Let me just leave the padding for now. I think it should be okay. And then you're going to give it a type, and the type is going to be the type is going to be a submit. So just say submit here. So it says submit, just like that. And once I have it, I can go ahead and close off this, and you're going to say register. So it's going to be register, just like that. Okay, so once I have this, I'm going to go ahead, and that's all I need basically for this form to work. So let's just go in here and simply refresh this. So we have the form in here. Okay, looks a bit gibberish. And how did the form come, and how did all that work? Okay, so let me just explain to you from the starting from the view. So in the view, you have created a form. If it's an empty form, if a person makes a GET request, in this case, if you go on the page and makes a refresh, you're making a GET request, so it's going to send you an empty form, and the form you're passing it into you're passing the form to our templates, and our templates in here we're going to we're displaying our form in here just by using this syntax right here. So once our form is displayed in here, the user will go ahead and fill the form. And once he fills the form, he's going to press this button that is going to submit the form. So submit the form to the registration point, and the registration point is going to receive the view rather is going to receive the post method, and then you're going to check if it's a post method. Create the form with the form pre-filled with the data that the user provided, and then you're going to check if the form is valid. If the form is valid, you're going to save the form and then return to the user that the form has been successfully saved, right? So great, that's what basically we are doing right now. If the form has not the validation field, you're going to send a message that saying that the form the details has not been provided correctly, right? So that's basically what we are doing right now. But right now we're not displaying any of the messages, and I'm going to show you just in a second how to display the messages. But first of all, let's go ahead and fix this form and make it look prettier. And to do that, you have something called Django crispy forms. That's what we're going to be using in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and actually install Django crispy forms. So copy this, go back into your terminal, and I'm just going to hit Ctrl+C to stop my development server, clear the terminal, and simply paste that code and run the code again. That's going to have Django crispy forms installed. So once that's installed, we need to go ahead and add it to install the app. So you can see all the instructions are here. So I'm going to copy it, go into my my project, go into my notes app, go into my settings.py file, and then find installed apps, which is right here. And just go ahead and simply sorry, I hit Ctrl+C instead of Ctrl+V. That always happens to me. I don't know if this happens to you guys, but let me know in the comment section if it happens to you, if hitting Ctrl+C instead of Ctrl+V. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and paste it right there. So once I have it pasted right there, let's see what next. So you have to specify this as well. So you have to copy this and then go inside of your settings, and then at the bottom right here, paste that over here. So paste it here, and I'm going to change this with Bootstrap 4 since you're using Bootstrap 4. So Bootstrap and then 4, just like that. So we're going to be using the Bootstrap 4 Bootstrap 4 library instead of Bootstrap 5. If you want to use Bootstrap 5, they provide instructions on if you want to use Bootstrap 5 and all of that. So once we have this done, let's go back to the restart our development server. So restart the development server, it's running. So let's go back into the page right here and then simply refresh. Okay, it doesn't show anything, right? So I don't expect it to change anything. So you have to go in here and you have to add in a couple of more code for this to reflect. So the first thing is we need to do is we need to go ahead up here instead of here, and then we need to go ahead and simply say the following. So you need to say code block, right? Code block, and you're going to have a code block right here. You're going to simply say load, and then you're going to say crispy. Let me get the spelling. So crispy underscore forms underscore tags. Okay, crispy form tags, just like that. And in here you need to go ahead and simply say use the pipe symbol and then say crispy just like that. So once we have this done, let's go ahead and try to refresh this again. Okay, now the form looks like this. So it has changed in appearance. So just by using the crispy forms, our form now just looks like this. So I think I'm zoomed in a bit. So if I zoom 100%, it looks like this. So this is our form right here. So I can just zoom in again so you guys can see better. Yeah, so this is our form right here. Form has been created right here. So now you can see everything. It has a boost, nice layout and all of that, the registration button, everything looks great, right? So one thing we forgot to do in our form, and is very, very important, is something that's called cross-site request forgery token. So this is you need to add this to your form to protect your forms against a kind of cyber attack called cross-site request forgery tokens. If you don't add it to it, then your forms, your data is vulnerable, your website is going to be vulnerable to this kind of attack. So I'm just going to go ahead and simply add it here, and it's going to be cross-site request forgery underscore token. So it's protect our forms against a form of attack called cross-site request forgery token attacks. Okay, So once we have that added, we can go back and refresh this page right here, and everything was as expected. So if I go ahead and hit submit, the form still gets submitted. We don't have any information. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually add the messaging system, so that in case there's any message, we can see if anything is wrong or something like that. So let's go ahead and add the message to it. So I'm just going to go into my VS Code right here, go ahead and go into my main.py file, which is under templates in the main.py file. And instead of here, I'm going to go ahead and add the logic for messaging. Okay, to do that logic for messaging, let me see the logic we have to write here. So we have to write the logic right here inside of this right here. Okay, so let me just keep it here. So I'm just say let me just keep a comment and say messaging logic or something like that. So call it anything you want, feel free. Okay, so instead of this messaging logic, I'm going to create this form this right here, and I'm going to say if messages, if message, right? So if messages, we're going to say if messages, and remember to close off the if block. So let's say end if. Okay, so if messages, now we're going to keep all the content in here. So if message, what we're going to go ahead and do, we're going to loop through all those messages and then display them. So we're going to say for message in messages, right? For message in messages, and then you're going to go ahead and end that for loop. Okay, so I'm going to say end for, just like that. Okay, so instead of this for loop, what do we want to do? So I want to go ahead and do create a div, and I'm going to create a div right here. So div, and this div is going to have a class to it. So let's go in here and say class, and the class is going to be alert, and then it's going to be alert hyphen, and then hyphen, and I'm going to go ahead and keep a code block passing variable right here. So I say message dot tag. So message dot tags. So if I go back, we're working with the tag, right? If I go back in here to Bootstrap, if I go back, I think right here to, yeah, so you can see we have these different tags. So we have the alert tag, we have the primary tags, the secondary tags. So we're going to say alert dash info. So the Bootstrap message, sorry, the Django message have those tags, so it can be alert dash primary, alert dash secondary, alert dash warning, which is all defined in here, right? So if it's a success message, it's going to be alert hyphen is going to be success, right? So success right here. Okay, so we're going to get those messages, and we're simply going to go ahead and simply say passing those messages. So message. Okay, so once we have this done, that's basically it for the messaging system. So let me just go back and just check if our website is working. So I'm just going to refresh this. It all works. So if I submit the form, nothing happens, right? So great. Let's go ahead and actually let's actually fill in some there's some random information. Let me just delete. Let me just keep this here, and then let's say, let me just hit this, and it doesn't work. So let me just say put in some random information and some random, and then it doesn't display any error message for now. Okay, so now let's go back into our views right here. Into our views, what I want to go ahead and do is the following. So I want to go back into my registration page. Let me see what I wanted us to go ahead and do here. So we have the message, the registration information recorded, and let's check if I've implemented this properly or if I've not made any error. So I'm just going to go into my authentication app, and then I'm going to go into views, and instead of the views, what I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go to the section of the registration view. Okay guys, so one thing I noticed, our form was not being submitted. So I took a time and I tried to investigate what was the issue. So I found the issue was actually very silly. You see this side right here, we actually called it bottom instead of button or whatever. So we actually called button, my bad for that. So that was the issue why the form wasn't submitted, because this was not a submit button in the first place. So that was the issue why the form wasn't submitted, and sorry for that typo. Now that it's fixed, we can actually go ahead. I'm actually in this page right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and simply log out and simply go ahead and go into the just delete that. I'm going to say out/register page, and once I'm inside of this page, I can go ahead and provide the details. So let me just zoom in a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and provide a detail, username, and then my email. I'm just going to change this part of it because I already use that for the admin page. So I'm going to provide in my password, and then also provide in my other details right here. And once I have that, I can simply go ahead and click on register. And once that's data, you can see account has been created for Prince. And now if I go ahead and go into my my admin page, I should not be able to see that account being created. So if I go into admin and I try to log in as the admin user, so I'm going to log in as my admin user. So once I'm in here, I can go into the users table and I can see now we have Prince being created. That was created right here. Okay, so now the Prince user has been created. So yeah, that's sorry for that bug. That was just a typo that I made. So this is button and not bottom. It's a bit tricky to find out because I thought it was actually the view which was giving me an error, but I went through the view and there was no error in the view. It was just the HTML that was wrong. Okay, so sorry for that typo. And yeah, that's basically it for this tutorial. So we have been able to create a registration form, and we have been able to simply register a simple user on our page, right? So yeah, that's basically it. So once you have now been able to register a user, what's next is being able to create a login page and then a logout functionality. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next tutorial. We're going to create a logout and a login functionality, after which you're going to go ahead and create a CRUD functionality for the for the Note app itself. The user can create an ad, can create a note, can delete a note, can update a note, and retrieve notes from the database. So that's basically what you're going to be going ahead and do. So yeah, that's all for this. So if you enjoyed the tutorial so far, please kindly consider liking the video, sharing the content, and supporting the channel, because I'm just a small channel growing up. So one thing I do for me is actually share the video with your friends or anyone who you think might find it helpful. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep safe.